So we are recording. For those of us just joining right now, make sure to mute your microphone. Again, thank you so much for being flexible and jumping on Zoom with us today. My name is Liz Cass, and I'm the executive director of executive producer of Lola, Local Opera, Local Artists here in Austin, Texas. And it's just my pleasure to welcome you to this very special event today. I wanted to take a moment to describe myself. I have long dark hair. It's parted right in the middle. I'm wearing glasses that have some red rims on the tops. I have some long dangly gold earrings on, some gold necklaces on. I'm wearing a red top with a turquoise and navy blue and white pattern on it. And now I'd like to take this moment to read a land acknowledgement. We recognize that we are privileged to nurture our community and create art and music on what were historically the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples who were disposed of their homelands. Land acknowledgements are an expression of gratitude and appreciation to the Indigenous peoples, the traditional caretakers of the land. We would like to acknowledge that we are coming to you from the Indigenous lands of Turtle Island, the ancestral name for what is now called North America. We would like to acknowledge the Alabama Coushatta, Caddo, Carrizo, Comecrudo, Coahuilcan, Comanche, Kickapoo, Lipan Apache, Tonkawa, and Icelta del Sur Pueblo, and all the American Indians and indigenous peoples and communities who have been or have become a part of these lands and territories in Texas. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Lola's artistic producer, my good friend, Rebecca Herman, who will also be introducing our esteemed guest today.
Welcome, everyone. I am so glad that you're all here with us. It is a really big, exciting concert for us, and I'm so thrilled that Nicole was willing to work with Lola. And her passion for singing and for educating the community on all of these wonderful Black composers is really admirable, and I've been watching her work since we were students together at UT. Over 10 years ago. So Nicole is a native from Texas, and she works in the Houston and Austin communities very often, promoting Black composers and African-American works. She has been hailed for her full, rich soprano voice, and her career includes opera, sacred music, and the promotion of music by African-American composers. She has sung the roles of Lady Billows in Albert Herring, the Queen of the Night and First Lady in The Magic Flute, Lidouane in Poulenc's Dialogues of the Carmelites, and she was also recorded in the recording of the newly rewritten Duke Ellington opera Queenie Pie. I think that was with UT. And we're just really thrilled to have her with us today. Her collaborator, Nikki Birdsong, is also a great pianist and collaborator in the Austin area. She has been described as having a quiet elegance by the Austin American Statesman. She has worked with a number of communities in the Austin area, including 1 Ounce Opera, the Austin Summer Musical for Children, and has performed with the Philharmonic Orchestra, PKW Productions, and members of the Austin Symphony, the Austin Opera, and Conspirari. She's just a great artist and musician, and we're thrilled that she and Nicole were willing to bring their artistry to Lola and be our collaborators. So with that, I will turn it over to Nicole, and we'll get started.
Thank you so much. It was great catching up with you, Rebecca, and doing the interview. And basically, y'all just got to see a recording of us hanging out and talking about old times. So thank you so much for that. And just wanted to let everybody know this is just something I'm very, very passionate about. I was in I was a student at the University of Houston when I first came across this music. Actually, my voice teacher at the time, Debria Brown, made sure that everyone in her studio did something by a Black artist. She actually did this for many different categories. And like we all sang a Russian song one year, and we all sang something in Czech. And she was just very much about learn something outside of the norm. And the norm for classical music performance in colleges and universities is usually German, French, and Italian men in Europe. So we wanted to learn different music. The first piece that we're going to jump into is called "The Song to the Dark Virgin." I love this piece. It's the text is fantastic. I want to read that to you really quickly. Would that I were a jewel, a shattered jewel, that all my shining brilliance might fall at thy feet, thou dark one. Would that I were a garment, a shimmering silken garment, that all my folds might wrap about thy body, absorb thy body, and hold and hide thy body, thou dark one. Would that I were a flame, but one sharp leaping flame to annihilate thy body, thou dark one. The thing I like about this piece so much, there's a couple of things. One is this piece lies in a lower part of my voice. It sounds fantastic also when mezzo sopranos sing it. It's great for me to start off a concert because I need to warm up the low part of my voice first before I go up. I will always have high notes. I lose low notes. So if I start with low notes, it makes my high notes stronger, and I'll keep the whole range for longer. That's just how my body works. So that's like a little technical thing. The other thing is back to the poetry. I love the imagery that it creates. And this poem means very different things to different people. I've asked people and they're very vehement. No, it definitely says this. And someone else says, how can you say that? It means this. So it'd be interesting for you to hear the song and determine what you think the words are saying, especially in the setting by the fabulous Florence Price. Go ahead. Would that I were a jewel, a shattered jewel, that all my shining brilliance might fall at thy feet, thou dark one. Would that I Thank you. So the next piece is by just a note of reference. Most of the poetry and most of the text is by Langston Hughes. You'll be able to click, if you have access to the concert program, you can click on the songs. They are hyperlinked to take you to the text, as well as you can click on the composers' names to take you to a brief bio of each composer, as well as for the other one song that's not with poetry by Langston Hughes. At the bottom, you can click on the text for Paul Laurence Dunbar, and it'll take you to Hey Taylor, can you
have a better signal?
can you turn the phone off? Yeah, mute your phone. That's my lovely niece. And then, so the next piece is called Minstrel Man. It's from Margaret Bond's 3 Dream Portraits, which is a song cycle that she wrote talking about different dreams. This particular song strikes me very strongly. It talks about, it kind of has this clown music, if you will, sort of, but not really. And it reminds me of having to be smiling and happy while being resigned to one's place in life. It reminds me of, there's Pagliacci, who is the jilted lover. He's, crying, laugh, 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 reading Pagliacci. And this is kind of that sense of the words, the text to this is very poignant. I'm gonna read that to you right now. Because my mouth is wide with laughter and my throat is deep with song, you do not think I suffer after I have held my pain so long. Because my mouth is wide with laughter, you do not hear my inner cry. Because my feet are gay with dancing, you do not know I die. Thank you. The next piece is called Breath of a Rose. I love this song. I love this poetry because Langston Hughes wrote this when he was rather young. This is about his first love. There's actually a video of him talking about this years later. His first love, and it didn't last very long. I think he says maybe about a week or a month. And so he felt that love is just fickle. So in my opinion, this is a version of Langston Hughes as an emo poet, because it's just the tragedy, the nothingness of everything. It's just one of those things. So I love that aspect of it. Musically, it's very interesting. It sounds, musically, it doesn't have quite a tonal center. Everything doesn't, never quite revolved. It kind of plays around in key areas, but it never lands, if that makes sense. When Langston Hughes first heard this piece, so William Grant Still, who's a very important African-American composer. He is considered the dean of African-American composers. And when he set this piece, Langston Hughes didn't like it. He didn't like his setting. He thought that William Grant Still missed the point completely. He felt that nobody would understand it. When I hear this piece, I go, yeah, that makes perfectly good sense. So it'd be interesting to know what you think and how you feel about it. It is also interesting to note that years later, when Langston Hughes does talk about this, I think he does get it by that time. So it's just an interesting thing. Let me read you the words, and then the next thing you'll hear will be the song. Love is like dew on lilacs and dawn. Comes the swift sun, and the dew is gone. Love is like starlight in the sky at morn, starlight that dies when the day is born. Love is like perfume in the heart of a rose. The flower withers, the perfume goes. Love is no more than the breath of a rose, no more than the breath of a rose. Thank you very much. The next piece is It's very interesting. It's a work called Cantata. It's based on the Baroque cantatas, which are religious pieces that have sections, just like a symphony does, like if you're familiar with that. This particular cantata has sections called prelude, rondo, recitative, air, and toccata. It's interesting because there's nothing that really sets those off when you hear the pieces. It's something that was being done in the 20th century music, where there was a lot of hearkening back to old themes and old ideas, but making them brand new. The composer, John Daniels Carter, in this work does something really, really interesting, I think, is he takes well-known spirituals, and if you hear only the voice, you know these songs, you know these spirituals, they sound just like the ones you may have seen at church or may have heard somewhere. But his piano accompaniment, which is not really accompaniment, it's piano and voice creating a new composition. It makes it something completely different to hear the words of "Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child" listed as a recitative to a song called "Let Us Break Bread Together." So that plays a different role in your mind from how you might have thought of that song, either one of those songs before. And then when you hear the accompaniment and how he has set them, it's very, very different. Different's not the right word. I mean, difference, the perfect word, but it's very, very new. It's just not what you're expecting. And I love the way he sets these pieces. There's no words to read because these are spirituals. Spirituals are works created by African Americans during slavery. They do not have a known composer. A spiritual does not have a known composer. They kind of grew organically. There were call and answer songs that were sung to each other while slaves were out in the field and working, or sometimes singing to themselves. A lot of them have secret messages. There's a lot to what spirituals are, which would be a whole nother concert to delve into that. But it's interesting knowing that those are the words that are used for these pieces, which are composed because John Daniels has created a new composition using known words, which composers do that all the time. We just heard William Grant Still set words by Langston Hughes. These two pieces will play back to back. And if you were to see the whole set live, you would hear basically 5 songs altogether. I would love to know what you think of hearing the setting of these songs as a recitative and an air. Thank you very much. I do want to add one thing about the composer, John Daniels Carter. It was really interesting when I first performed the entire work in 2011. I did everything I could to find out information about John Daniels Carter, and I could not find any. Or I could find very few things, and it's usually in form of a statement here and there. The most interesting statement was, it was at the time unknown if he was living or had passed. Nobody knew. I talked to other people who had tried to do research. Nobody knew any information about John Daniels Carter. In 2013, someone tracked him down and did their dissertation, their doctoral dissertation on him. So they were able to get a ton of information. We do know that he is deceased. We do know more about him writing this piece of music, this work. We know that Leontine Price actually premiered it. And I do have a link to that dissertation at the bottom of your concert program. So I just thought that was so interesting. I couldn't find anything on this guy, but this work is like I need to know who could come up with this. So that was my drive to try and figure out the mystery. And fortunately, it has been solved, just not by me. So with that, I will move into the next piece. It's called Theology. Now, I will do you an honor by not reading the poetry to you, because the words are the key to it all. This is a delightful song. Betty Jackson King, she was very much known as an educator, and she was just fabulous in her work. All of these composers are. I haven't talked about all the composers as much, just because I feel that that's something that you can definitely look up. But if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. But I will tell you, this is a fun song to sing, and it's fun because there's a twist at the end. So with that, take it away. Isn't that fun? Anyway, so I really just have a good time singing that song. The next piece, Love Let the Wind Cry, How I Adore Thee, has a wonderfully long title. It's a work that's actually a translation, I'm sorry. It's written by Sappho, and is translated by Henry Thornton Wharton. And it was set to music by Miss Undine Smith Moore for a wedding of two of her very close friends. And the song is a very over the top, huge expression of love, and it equates the love one person has for another with the valleys and the mountains and the rivers and the oceans and everything is onomatopoeic and hard consonants, and it's just like this big, it's a lot of drama. I love singing it because it's a big dramatic song. So with that, let me read the wonderful words for this. Love, let the wind cry on the dark mountain, bending the ash trees and the tall hemlocks with a great voice of thunderous legions. How I adore you. Let the hoarse torrent in the blue canyon, murmuring mightily out of the gray mist of primal chaos, cease not proclaiming how I adore thee. Let the long rhythm of crunching rollers breaking and bursting on the white seaboard tighten and tireless, tell while the world stands how I adore thee. Love, let the clear call of the tree cricket, frailest of creatures, green as the young grass, mark with his trilling resonant bell note, how I adore thee. Let the glad lark song over the meadow, that melting lyric of molten silver, be a signal to listening mortals, how I adore thee. But more than all sounds, surer, serener, and fuller of passion and exultation, let the hushed whisper in thine own heart say, how I adore thee. Thank you. Can you imagine that at a wedding? That's a really dramatic song. That's not for subtle, like little sweet blushing brides. That's like a very dramatic song. The next song is called Girl. It's from a larger work called Heart on the Wall. It's written by Robert Owens. Interestingly, Robert Owens is a composer who set the most of Langston Hughes' poetry to music. He only recently passed just a couple of years ago, 2017. He was born here in the United States, but he lived in Germany for quite a long time. And he traveled, of course, between the two when he was teaching and performing, but mostly he lived in Germany in his adulthood. The two met, Langston Hughes and Robert Owens met in Germany. They both kind of met and said, "Hey, I heard about you." And then went, "Yeah, I heard about you too." And Langston Hughes then handed Robert Owens a book of his poetry and said, "See what you can come up with." And at the end of the week, Robert had set several song cycles, and that was the only time that they had ever met, was 1 week in their youth. Well, I'll say youth, but in their 20s in Germany. Yet he's actually put up the most music with Langston Hughes text. So I find that very interesting. Someone who's well known, who happens to live here in Austin, is Donnie Ray Albert. He has a recording of Robert Owens, of one of his song cycles for baritone, and it's pretty fabulous. So with that, I'm gonna talk about the piece a little bit, Girl. It's part of this song cycle. It's the fourth song in it, the third or the fourth song, I forget actually. And I love the words of it. It's talking about a young lady who died and how her death affects the community. It's not a sad song. I don't find this song sad at all. I find it interesting, and I'll read you the words and think about what you think this means and how it's set. It's set in this very waltz-like dance setting, and to me, it's just very hopeful, and it shows the impact of what one person can do for others just by the choices they make and how they choose to live their lives. So the setting says, "She lived in sinful happiness and died in pain." Hold on a second. "She lived in sinful happiness and died in pain. She danced in sunshine and laughed in rain. She went one summer morning when the flowers spread in the plain, but she told everybody that she was coming back again. Folks made a coffin and hid her deep in earth. Seems like she said, my body brings new birth. For sure there grew flowers and tall young trees and sturdy weeds and grasses to sway in the breeze. And sure she lived in growing things with no pain to laugh in sunshine and to dance in rain." And Thank you. I really enjoy singing that piece. For one, it's high, and I just like singing high. It's also, I don't know, it's just really charming. I just really enjoy singing that one. The next piece is a lot of fun for me to sing as well because it is a classical blues song. What is a classical blues song, you may say? It is a blues song that happens to be written out in part of a classical song cycle. So it's really just a blues song. But thankfully, H. Leslie Adams has written this piece and it's part of a song cycle called The Wider View. I found this piece really, really interesting. I thought about it. It felt different to me when I sang it years ago. Homesick Blues, the title kind of gives it away. And somebody who just really wants to go home. And the words speak of probably someone who, through the Great Migration, ended up working in the North, who misses home and family in the South. It even says, there's a line that says, I want to roll to the South. However, during this time with COVID, I find the words, without changing any of them, can mean something else. It can mean, I'm sick of home. The same words can, to me, express the exact same thing. I am here all the time and I am sick of home and I want to go somewhere. So here are the words. Let's see. Actually, I'm not seeing them right now. I'll let you listen to the piece and notice how a couple of things. Langston Hughes is also known for writing poetry that is the blues. Music is infused in his poetry, in his text, because of the way he writes all of our slang and our vernacular language, and he sets it rhythmically by the stanzas and how everything is broken up. It reads like music. It sounds like music. It feels like music. So I'll let you hear H. Leslie Adams' setting of this text. Somewhere Thank you so much. I did find the words to it, if y'all want me to read that. The railroad bridge is a sad song in the air. The railroad bridge is a sad song in the air. Every time the trains pass, I want to go somewhere. I went down to the station, my heart was in my mouth. Went down to the station, my heart was in my mouth. Looking for a boxcar to roll me to the south. Homesick blues, Lord, it's a terrible thing to have. Homesick blues is a terrible thing to have. To keep from crying, I opens my mouth and laughs. I love it. Thank you so much for listening to me. I'm ready to answer any questions you may have about any of it.
Well, I think we probably all very enthusiastically would love to give you another round of applause. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this music and this insight with us. And you sound amazing. You sound so good. So there's some, I think we have some kudos here. Rebecca says, I keep thinking this one is my favorite, and then the next one comes along and I love the next one. And Patricia says the same. And yeah, I think there's a lot of love out here for you. So I would invite anybody who has questions to enter those questions in the chat box right now, or if you have any comments, questions or comments. Great program. I'm sure you can see the chats as well. Nicole and Nikki, what a privilege. You give yourself so freely. It has been a joy. I love to hear music I have never heard before. That's from Lynn Bridge. When you're trying, I have a question. When you're trying to program something like this, I mean, I'm sure you have so much to choose from, right? So what goes into selecting each piece? Because from my perspective, this was really well balanced as far as some more upbeat things, some more contemplative pieces. How do you make those decisions? What pieces make the cut for any given program?
It's actually kind of academic for me. In that I'm actually thinking of, well, I already have a piece that's this long. Can it be this long and slow? Or do I have too many pieces like that come together and try to space out things? Another way I do it in a different concert I did is I actually have themed concerts. So I did one called, and I'm gonna get the order of the names wrong, but it was Stars, Star, Spirit, Sand, and She. Yeah, so I grouped all the songs about a woman together. So that was the she part. All the songs about the stars, the heavens, that was grouped together. Nikki Birdsong composed several piano pieces for that, and they were all about her childhood. So that was like sand, like playing in the sand. And then and then Spirit was actually the entire John Carter cantata that I performed. So that's what I do. I think of themes, I think of what I want to say, or I look at the structure of what pieces I've picked. If I'm not doing whole sets, then I try to balance them very, very specifically.
Have you performed this particular concert live for a live audience?
Not this particular concert. And I'm trying to think, is there anything in this? I've performed each of these songs before, but not necessarily on the same concert.
I have a question, Nicole. When you sing the cantata, which is the spiritual lyrics composed, I'm sure that you've also sung those lyrics in their more traditional spiritual setting, or not setting, but as they've been handed down. do you find it's a similar experience, or do you find they're very separate experiences? And can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, for me, they are very separate. Well, I say that, but I mean, at the same time, it's basically the same tune for the voice. It's the piano part that's so different, but it feels very different to me. Sometimes I feel like A Motherless Child is already this, like the title just has all this weight on it, and it's this tune that is very common. Actually, there's other songs, other spirituals that are set to the same tune, but to hear how he plays that, and he throws in these notes that are definitely not what you're expecting in certain places, like and then motherless child. It's like it goes to this note, and we're like, wait, that's not, what does that mean? That feels different. And it doesn't make it any less sad, because I think the song is just a sad song, but it feels very different. It's a different sadness. And for my mind, I tell myself a different story. I create a story. I'm a story-driven person. I create a story in my mind about every single song I sing. This started when I was 14, and I got my first real art song, Caro Mio Ben, which is, if you know anything about singers, that's usually your first Italian art song, and it's from the book called The 24 Italian Songs and Arias, also known as 24 Italian Hits. And the way I was taught to learn to sing this is I speak all the words, I learn all the words, all the inflections, and trying to get the language right. But also I work on my own translation, and I come up with a story. Who's singing? Why are they singing this? What do they want to say? What's supposed to happen at the end of this song? What happened that led you to this song? So I do that with actually every single song I ever sing. And so with this, I imagine that the situation is different from the situation when I would sing this in, say, at the Burley arrangement of Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, or Hall Johnson arrangement, or some of the other ones that are out there. At Boatner, there's several arrangements of that song, just because it's so moving to so many people. And I just make up a different story. That's the long and short of it.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Nicole, this is Craig. Craig Latson. I am a music education director. I was wondering, what is your favorite genre? You sang some classical, blues, standard classical. What's your favorite?
I am trained in the classical singing. I think I do that best. I love singing spirituals of all kinds, and which I can do very classically and add my own, church upbringing. I think I just sing classically best. Now, if you're asking me which kinds of classical singings do I do well, I like certain German lieder. I love Puccini and Verdi as far as opera. I love French art song. I love French art song. Specifically, I love Debussy. Debussy and Duparc. Love those guys.
Okay. Would those be your favorite composers?
Some of them. I kind of like all of it. So like, I really like the Robert Owens piece, Girl. And I also I love Florence Price and Margaret Bonds. And that's why I started with those two. I love, I just love the way they set music. I love the way they set the poetry. And it's so interesting. A lot of the poetry that they set are people who are contemporary of theirs. So it's not this ancient poetry from time before, although it can be, that's not really an issue, but it's so interesting when a composer is collaborating with somebody and saying, hey, what did you think about when you wrote this? And what do you think if I said it this way? And how does that work? I find that really interesting. I don't know that you can always tell that from music, but I do find that interesting for those two composers in particular. Margaret Bonds, interestingly, a side note and a tangent to your question here. Margaret Bonds was very close to Langston Hughes. I mean, she was married, had kids, but they were like besties. They were really, really close to the point that when he died, she didn't last much longer after him. And I think she was buried next to him, if I'm not mistaken. They were just very, very close. And so her setting a lot of his songs, the first piece I think she ever set was his, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. And just for her to be able to have that kind of collaboration, and actually didn't necessarily collaborate on that song. He wrote poetry, that's what he did. And then composers picked up his poetry and set it to music. But to be able to go and say, hey, best friend, what were you thinking when you did this? What do you think if I do this? How does that change it?
Yeah. Good. Have you ever dabbled with maybe creating your own arrangements?
I do, just because like my niece who's listening, she always, it's funny, this past weekend, she kept saying, Auntie Nicole, do you write your own songs? I was like, not really. And she says, why don't you just make up your own songs? I always walk around singing. I wonder that other people don't hear a soundtrack in their normal lives, but I do. I bet Liz and Rebecca also do as well. You know, the world is set to music. I haven't really formally dabbled with creating my own arrangements, except for when I sing something a cappella. Like I sing a version of Sweet Little Jesus Boy, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and there's a third one that I do. Were You There? I have my own arrangements of those that I do. And I sing them a cappella, but they're mine. So are you suggesting I should look into that more?
Absolutely.
Will do. Thank you so much.
I have a technical question for you. So obviously you're a very accomplished classical singer, and when you switch the style to the last piece, it was a real marked difference, but still obviously your voice and the timbre of your voice was just so present. But what were the changes? Were they major changes or slight changes that you made from going to a more classical style to a more bluesy, jazzy style?
That's an interesting question. Because I do have to think about it more. Otherwise, it'll become, have you ever heard somebody who sings classically to the radio? And you're like, that's not how that goes. So I do have to think about it. And I have to, like when I'm singing to the radio, unfortunately, I don't support as much. I don't, get in my voice and use my vote, this resonance is more like kind of that kind of thing. So I can't sing prolonged, or neither can I project with that kind of half singing kind of thing. So I have to find all the right resonances, but not maximize them in the way that I would for classical singing. Does that answer your question? There's a lot more in there, but like it's all mind games. It's all like, okay, now back off and just a little more, and okay, slowly here, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And it's so impressive because it is very hard to take the opera voice. Like if you're trying to switch styles, it's very hard to take the opera voice out. But I just thought you did a beautiful job bridging the styles and bringing yourself to both styles so beautifully.
Thank you very much.
Nicole, what is your range and what do you consider yourself to be as forward when it comes to a classical voice?
Excellent question. I am a soprano. I am clearly a
Okay.
soprano. I'm a soprano. Um, now, as far if you're talking about the FACH,
Yes.
FACH, well, many people will tell you I'm either a full lyric or a lirico spinto. Because I do like my Verdi.
Mhm.
But I don't sing, in general, I don't sing Wagner and that kind of thing. I would never sing, well, I wouldn't say never, but I don't sing the big, heavy stuff. But I like my Mimis and I love my Aidas.
Right, right.
Although those aren't the same really. And see, that's the thing. It all depends on who you talk to. Like somebody would say, well, Mimi is clearly full lyric and Aida is clearly lyrical spinto. So I say I'm somewhere in there.
Okay.
I do all that. Interestingly, my very first role was the Queen of the Night. The first role I ever sang on stage was the Queen of the Night. And it's not because I was a lyric, not a lyric, it's not because I was a coloratura, but up until about 10 years ago, no, 5 years ago, I had high Fs that were really easy. It was
Mhm.
a weird thing. And because I had it, I could sing the role and I did. And I actually sang it at UT because that when Rebecca came to UT, we were doing these multiple productions of the Queen of course I call it the Queen of the Night, but it's really called the Magic Flute.
Okay.
So I was singing a lot of Fs at that time.
Great.
I just wanted to add, since we're all meeting to talk, about opera and classical singing and this beautiful music that you've just provided for us, and voice types. How you were just saying that you love Mimi, but you also love Aida. Rebecca and I were just talking yesterday about how opera roles. A lot of times, opera roles are sort of like, okay, Mimi is a lyric role.
Mm-hmm.
Done and done, but singers don't really fit those categories. So I mean, I can hear all of that in your voice, the lyric and the spinto.
Thank you. I
Mhm.
was Lansing Price talked about that often. Everybody put her in categories. Most people put her in the lyrical spinto. She would always actually be, no, I'm a lyric. I'm a lyric, as if her voice was so little. I'm a lyric. And interestingly, she did these two great opera compilation sets, aria compilation sets, and one was I see it in my head. It's like white and has a painted picture of her on the front, and it's 4 discs. It's interesting because on that is a recording of her singing the one from the Caro Nome. She's not, if you know anything about that opera, that's sung by a lighter soprano. Some would say a coloratura, but I know some very light lyrics who would sing that. Leontine Price sings that with the fullness of Leontine Price's voice, and never, ends it on a high E trill that goes on for days. So it's, well, for one, that's something she could do with no problem. And for those who don't know, when I say a high E, you've heard of the high C, which is, if you're looking at a staff, it's a line and then a line above the staff. Well, she sings the line above that and trills on it. So trilling is going back and forth between two notes, like, ah. So, and she does that way up there. Which is amazing. Yet if you go by strict rules of what somebody should do after categorizing them and putting them in boxes, she's not supposed to be able to. But clearly she had no problems at all. So
Are there any Black composers' work that you haven't performed yet that you are looking forward to kind of digging into?
Oh, there are so many because there are just so many. There's just so many. There's a lot. Adolphus Hellstock is he was a composer, but he was also a conductor, like a very well-known, very accomplished conductor. He has pieces that are completely atonal, and he has some beautiful spirituals at the same time that are not. I would love to dig my teeth into some of his works. Um, he's one, Robert Owens has several sets for high singers. He has a set for coloratura specifically, and then he has a set for just sopranos. Um, let's see, who else? Who else that I didn't choose? Of course, now I can't think of anybody. There's so many though. There really, really are. Oh, I did a set by, her last name is Perry. And I love singing it. And I cannot think of her name right now, but I did a set for, on a previous recital when I was at UT. And it was amazing. The pieces were very, very different from each other. I will look it up and I will provide that information later. But yeah, there's a ton of composers. It's just a matter of getting in there and looking at them all. I have an annotated bibliography. So the way all of this started for me, as far as like seriously studying African-American composers or Black composers, is when you're a student at UT in the doctoral program, you have a class that's basically a library science kind of class. And the purpose of this is to learn how the library works. You learn how to use all the catalogs, you learn how to look up other dissertations, you learn how to do all this stuff. So our assignment for the whole semester was to write this annotated bibliography on whatever topic. I chose to write it on African-American composers. And that's how I got into, where's all this music been that I never heard of and never knew of? And that became my dissertation later on. So yeah, it's tons. I can find that bibliography. Although now there's new composers. There's new composers who are writing like Pulitzer Prize award-winning stuff. I mean, there's so much being written right now, and it's amazing. It's being performed by major houses. The operas are being performed by major houses, and people are, because of the internet and because of being able to do things like this and actually post concerts online, and people can actually hear this anywhere. You know, it's pretty amazing. So yeah, there's a prolific amount of works out there that I really want to dig into and get to know as much as possible.
Thank you. I think that Patricia has a question.
Yes, I remember when you were still getting your doctoral, I think it was, I don't know if you had just gotten your doctorate, but the Black Composer Series, are you thinking about possibly starting to do more outreach to let more people know? Because that's how I started, like I had never heard of H. Leslie Adams before you introduced me. I still can't remember the name of that song, but you introduced me to, and I was like, this is the most beautiful song ever. So have you thought about doing outreach again, about letting people know about these composers? Because they need to know.
Actually, yes, I have thought about it, and there's some things I would like to do. I want to start, so these are just ideas I have, and I have to find the time and energy because I have a day job. But I want to start like blogging about them, just starting with that, like maybe once a quarter, because I can't like concentrate enough to research and, and blog and do the other part of my life every day or anything like that. But maybe once a quarter, just like blogging about a composer. Oh, podcasts. Yeah, that's a good idea. That would be an excellent podcast to do too. and I can bring on like guests and hopefully new people. I'm always, there's two things that I'm also really passionate about is new people getting involved with classical music, and young people getting involved with classical music. And the truth is, people having music in their lives, music should be everywhere. All kinds of music should be everywhere. It's just that I think classical music is still, it's considered like, you know, I don't do that. And that's definitely not who I am. It's not who most of the people are that I know who are involved in it. It's, the highbrow part of it is very much a misnomer, at least for those of us performing it. Now, maybe people who get to sit in the audience and everything, maybe that's a thing that could change. I mean, kind of like the reasons why Hamilton has seats, cheap seats, just for to make sure that people, regular people can see it, not only people who can pay whatever the ticket prices are to see it. So that's something else I would like to see is to make audiences more, make this music more accessible to audiences, much in the way that Liz is already doing with One Once Opera and with Lola. I mean, she's doing fabulous work. She and Rebecca both are already doing fabulous work. For anybody who's out there who's listening to this, who doesn't know what they do some amazing things about making classical music available to anybody, and it's pretty amazing. So yeah, I would like to do more of that with them. That would be awesome.
Yeah, anytime you want to do anything, Nicole, and anytime we can think about collaborating, let's make it happen. It's such a delight, and yes, likewise, we share a similar mission.
Yes, yes we do. Awesome.
Any other questions out there? Feel free to speak up or throw something in the chat. Raise your hand and I'll call on you. And again, a reminder, this is being recorded, so this entire presentation will be, oh, we got a question, Michael Herman.
I do have a question. I probably wasn't going to ask, but now I'll ask it. On the piece, The Motherless Child, it was labeled as a recit, and it didn't sound like any recit in any opera I'd ever heard. Can you talk about that a little bit, about why it's called recit and what that means to you, and that general question?
Sure. Yeah, excellent question. So when they did catch up with information about John Daniels Carter, he actually said that he just really thought it was an interesting way of labeling this piece. So really, I don't know that he had anything behind it, but I do feel that it's interesting when you do put those kind of labels on the piece, on the music, and then, so for those who don't know, a recitative is usually a part of a long work, like a cantata or an opera, where usually it's closer to speech and it gives information out. It's like a good way to get the story down. Like, what happened? Okay, well, I went to the store and this happened. I met this guy. Da, 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 da. Really? Da, 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 da. You know, so it's more like that. However, that song doesn't lend itself to anything like that at all. And you can also think about, usually recitative follows or is followed by an aria or air. An aria is the song part, the part that expresses the single emotion, the main basic emotion about what's going on. And so to say, sometimes I feel like A Motherless Child is the prequel to Let Us Break Bread Together. I think that's very, very interesting. Part of my answer to Rebecca earlier, it's about having this different idea for this particular version of that song. And what I see it as this continuation of I'm going through this pain. Maybe I've lost my mother. However, I'm trying to celebrate with other people as we sit down to break bread together. So think of it as this one thought. And the way let us break bread together is it has these weird notes in it too. That's not the way the song normally goes. So it also tells me, or it makes me think of maybe there's some pain in that as well. The fact that mom's not here, I'm missing her terribly, but maybe the circumstances of it, like maybe I don't want to sit here and fight with these other relatives, but we're about to sit down and break bread, and I'm have to put on a nice face, and we're going to have to get through this, and God help us all. So that's a story I came up with for putting those two together and calling one a recit. It's interesting. The final piece of that work, cantata, is right on King Jesus, and it's a toccata is what it's listed as. It's a bear. That piece is a bear. It's fun to sing, but it's a lot to sing, and it's a lot to play. It's all your fingers and all your toes on the piano, and it moves. It is not slow, and it has so many notes that the page looks pretty dense. So to think of riding the typical ride on King Jesus, right? Think of that, and it's usually this sweeping, majestic thing. This is more frantic, and it's kind of almost yelling, and it's repetitive. It's like, ride on King Jesus, he's coming, you know, almost. That's another interpretation of that. And to put that into the same idea of, sometimes I feel like a motherless child, but I'm sad in a different way than I normally am in this one. And then we're going to break bread together. But I don't know if I want to break bread with these people. And Lord, come quick, because this is all too much. So that's a way I would put that whole story together to make sense in my head.
Thank you. That was really interesting and very helpful.
We probably have time for one more question if somebody has one.
I don't have a question, but I'll make a comment. I'm gonna take a father's privilege on this one. I know the stuff. I hear you, Nicole, but of course your mom and I love to hear you do gospels. Oh my goodness, you do those so very well. And you know, to anybody who have not had the privilege of hearing her do some of those gospels that she does, oh my. So yeah, those are still my favorites, I guess, because I'm more familiar with them. But I try not to let that hold me back. But I do love the way you do those. Just want to put that comment in, especially for you, Brother Craig.
Thank you. That does remind me, Patricia and I sing in the same choir. And
oh, okay.
Yeah, so I did get to sing, and I have sung Order My Steps.
Oh, that ought to be good.
And I sung it full gospel.
Oh, that ought to be good. Yes. All right. That's all I had to say on it. Like I said, a daddy's, privilege.
Oh, thank you so much for speaking up about that. Wow. Well.
And I'll say, and a mother's too, okay?
Yeah, notice I said mom, her mom, and I like those, yeah.
Oh, how wonderful. It's so nice to have you with us today, too.
Thank you.
Thank you both. You also got to hear my niece, Taylor, earlier. She had a couple lines.
Yay, Taylor!
Oh, Taylor.
Hi, Grandparents.
There she is. Hello, Taylor.
How's everyone doing?
Everyone's doing fine, Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole, it's been such an honor, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today, again, for being flexible and going with the flow. It's that time, it's that, you know, we're coming out of this crazy COVID time, and really hoping that the next time we do something like this, it is in person. But you're right, Nicole, it really does help to make this music more accessible, helps to break down that wall even further. This is about human connection. This is about what it means to be a human being. I'm just so appreciative of you sharing your stories and this amazing music with us today. It's certainly given me a lot of food for thought as far as programming and the music that I want to work on with my students. So I thank you for that. Rebecca, do you have anything to add?
I just echo what you say, and Nicole, I'm so glad that we're reconnected, and I look forward to our continuing collaborations and exploring some of these amazing composers and just your own voice and where you want to go with things. So thank you to everyone for showing up, and I hope you have a really beautiful weekend and blessed day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.